Chapter 23. I wake to terrible cramps and dizziness, cold sweat beads on my brow, and my limbs shiver uncontrollably. For the better part of a year, I have been poisoning my body every day. My blood is used to the doses, far higher than they were when I began. Addicted to them, now I can do without the poison. I lie on the stone floor and try to marshal my thoughts. Try to remember the many times Maddox was on a campaign and tell myself that he was uncomfortable on each one. Sometimes he slept stretched out on the ground, head pillowed on a clump of weeds and his own arms. Sometimes he was wounded and fought on anyway. He didn't die. I'm not going to die either. I keep telling myself that, but I'm not sure I believe it. For days, no one comes. I give up and drink the sea water. Sometimes I think about Cardan while I am lying there. I think about what it must have been like to grow up as an honored member of the royal family, powerful and unloved, fed on cat milk and neglect. To be arbitrarily beaten by the brother you most resembled and who most seemed to care for you. Imagine all those courtiers bowing to you, allowing you to hiss and slap at them. But no matter how many of them you humiliated or hurt, you would always know someone had found them worthy of love, when no one had ever found you worthy. Despite growing up among the folk, I do not always understand the way they think or feel. They are more like mortals than they believe, but the moment I allow myself to forget they're not human, they will do something to remind me. For that reason alone, I would be stupid to think I knew Cardan's heart from his story, but I wonder at it. I wonder what would have happened if I'd admitted he wasn't out of my system. They come for me eventually. They allow me a little water, a little food. By then, I am too weak to worry about pretending to be glamoured. I tell them the details I remember about Maddox's strategy room and what he thinks about Orlav's intentions. I go over the murder of my parents in visceral detail. I describe a birthday, pledge my loyalty, explain how I lost my finger and how I lied about it. I even lie to them, at their command. And then I have to pretend to forget when they tell me to forget. I have to pretend to feel full when they have told me I feasted and to be drunk on imaginary wine when all I've had is a goblet of water. I have to allow them to slap me. I can't cry. Sometimes, when lying on the cold stone floor, I wonder if there's a limit to what I will let them do. If there is something that would make me fight back, even if it dooms me. If there is, that makes me a fool. But maybe, if there isn't, that makes me a monster. Mortal girl, Balekin says one afternoon, when we're alone in the watery chambers of the palace. He does not like using my name, perhaps because he doesn't like having to recall it, finding me as disposable as all the human girls who have come through the hollow hole. I am weak with dehydration. They regularly forget to give me fresh water and food, enchanting me illusory sustenance when I beg for it. I am having difficulty concentrating on anything, despite the fact that Balekin and I are alone in a coral chamber, with guards swimming patrols at intervals that I count automatically. I do not even try to fight and flee. I have no weapon and little strength. Even were I able to kill Balekin, I am not a strong enough swimmer to make it to the surface before they got me. My plan has narrowed to endurance, to surviving hour by hour, sunless day by day. Perhaps I cannot be glamoured, but that doesn't mean I cannot be broken. Nikasha has said that her mother has many palaces in the undersea, and that this, built into the rock of Innswil and along the seafloor beneath it, is only one of them. But for me, it is a constant torment to be so close to home and yet leaks beneath it. Cages hang in the water all through the palace, some of them empty, but many of them containing mortals with greying skin. Mortals who seem as though they ought to be dead but occasionally move in ways that suggest they are not. The drowned ones. The guards sometimes call them, and more than anything, that's what I fear becoming. I remember thinking I'd spotted the girl I pulled out of Balekin's house at Dane's coronation, the girl who threw herself into the sea, the girl who certainly drowned. Now I am not so sure I was wrong. Tell me, Balekin says today, why did my brother steal my crown? Orlaf thinks she understands, because she understands the craving for power, but she doesn't understand Cardan. He never much cared for hard work. He liked charming people, he liked making trouble, but he despaired of real effort. And whether or not Nicasia would admit it, she doesn't understand either. The Cardans she knows might have manipulated you, but not into this. This is a test, I think nonsensically. A test where I have to lie, but I am afraid my ability to make sense has deserted me. I am no oracle, I say, thinking of Malmoren and the refuge he's found in riddles. Then guess, he says. When you paraded in front of my cell in the Tower of Forgetting, you suggested it was because I'd had a firm hand with him. But you of all people must believe he lacked discipline and that I sought his improvement. He must be remembering the tournament that Cardan and I fought and the way he tormented me. I am tangled up in memories, in lies. I am too exhausted to make up stories. In the time I knew him, he drunkenly rode a horse through a lesson from a well-respected lecturer, tried to feed me to Nixis, and attacked someone at a revel, I say. He did not seem to be disciplined, he seemed to have his way all the time. Balekin seems surprised. He sought Eldred's attention, he says finally. For good or for ill, and mostly for ill. Then perhaps he wants to be hiking for Eldred's sake, I say, or to spite his memory. That seems to draw Balekin's attention, though I said it only to suggest something that would misdirect him from thinking too much about Cardan's motives. Once it comes out of my mouth, I ponder whether there isn't some truth to it. Or because he was angry with you for chopping off Eldred's head, or being responsible for the deaths of all his siblings, or because he was afraid you might murder him too. Balekin flinches. Be quiet, he says, and I go gratefully silent. After a moment, he looks down at me. Tell me which of us is worthy of being High King, myself or Prince Cardan? You are, I say easily, giving him a look of practiced adoration. I do not point out that Cardan is no longer a prince. And would you tell him that yourself? He asks. I would tell him whatever you wish, I say with all the sincerity I can wearily muster. Would you go to him in his rooms and stab him again and again until his red blood ran out? Balekin asks, leaning closer. He says the word softly, as though to a lover. I cannot control the shudder that runs through me, and I hope he will believe it something other than disgust. For you? I ask, shutting my eyes against his closeness. For Orlaf? It would be my pleasure. He laughs. Such savagery. I nod, trying to rein in over eagerness at the thought of being sent on a mission away from the sea, at having the opportunity for escape. Orlach has given me so much, treated me like a daughter. I want to repay her. Despite the loveliness of my chambers and the delicacies I am given, I was not made to be idle. A pretty speech. Look at me, youth. I open my eyes and gaze up at him. Black hair floats around his face, and here, under the water, the thorns on his knuckles and running up his arms are visible, like the spiky fins of a fish. Kiss me, he says. What? My surprise is genuine. Don't you want to? He asks. This is nothing, I tell myself. Certainly better than being slapped. I thought you were Orlaf's lover, I tell him. Or Nicasia's. Won't they mind? Not in the least, he tells me, watching carefully. Any hesitation on my part will seem suspicious, so I move toward him in the water, pressing my lips against his. The water is cold, but his kiss is colder. After what I hope is a sufficient interval, I pull back. He wipes his mouth with the back of his hand, clearly disgusted, but when he stares down at me, there's greed in his eyes. Now kiss me as though I were Cardan. To buy myself a moment of reflection, I gaze into his owl eyes, run my hands up his thorned arms. It is clearly a test. He wants to know how much control he has over me. But I think he wants to know something else too, something about his brother. I force myself to lean forward again. They have the same black hair, the same cheekbones. All I have to do is pretend. The next day, they bring me a pitcher of clear river water, which I guzzle gratefully. The day after that, they begin to prepare me to return to the surface. The High King has made a bargain to get me back. I think over the many commands I gave him, but none was specific enough to have ordered He's paying a ransom for my safe return. He had been free of me, and now he's willingly bringing me back. I do not know what that means. Perhaps politics demanded it. Perhaps he really, really didn't like going to meetings. All I know is that I am giddy with relief, wild with terror that this is some kind of a game. If we do not go to the surface, I fear I will not be able to hide the pain of disappointment. Balikin glamours me again, making me repeat my loyalty to them, my love, my murderous intent toward Cardan. Balikin comes to the cave, where I am pacing back and forth, each scuff of my bare feet on the stone loud in my ears. I have never been so much alone, and I have never had to play a role for this long. I feel hollowed out, diminished. When we return to Elfham, we won't be able to see each other often, he says, as though this is something I will greatly miss. I am so yumpy that I do not trust myself to speak. You will come to Hollow Hall when you can. I wonder at the idea that he anticipates living in Hollow Hall, that he doesn't expect to be put in the tower. I suppose his freedom is part of the price of my release, and I am surprised all over again that Cardan agreed to pay it. I nod. If I need you, I will give you a signal, a red cloth dropped in your path. When you see it, you must come immediately. I expect that you will be able to fabricate some excuse. I will, I say, my voice coming out too loud in my ears. You must regain the High King's trust, get him alone, and then find a way to kill him. Do not attempt it if people are around. You must be clever, even if it takes more than one meeting. And perhaps you can find out more of your father's schemes. Once Cardan is dead, we will need to move fast to secure the military. Yes, I say. I take a breath and then dare ask what I really want to know. Do you have the crown? He frowns. Very nearly. For a long moment, I do not speak. I let the silence linger. Into it, Balkin speaks. Grimsen needs you to finish your work before he can make it. He needs my brother dead. Ah, I say, my mind racing. Once Balekin risked himself to save Cardan, but now that Cardan stands between him and the crown, he seems willing enough to sacrifice his brother. I try to make sense of that, but I can't focus. My thoughts keep spiraling away. Balekin smiles, a Sark's grin. Is something the matter? I am almost broken. I feel a little faint, I say. I don't know what could be wrong. I remember eating. At least I think I remember eating. He gives me a concerned look and calls for a servant. In a few moments, I am brought a platter of raw fish, oysters, and inkiro. He watches in disgust as I devour it. You will avoid all charms. Do you understand? No rowan, no bundles of oak, ash, and thorn. You will not wear them. You will not so much as touch them. If you are given one, you will cast it into a fire as soon as you can conceal doing so. I understand, I say. The servant has brought no more fresh water for me, but wine instead. I drink it greedily, with no care for the strange aftertaste or how it goes to my head. Balekin gives me more commands, and I try to listen, but by the time he leaves, I am dizzy from the wine, exhausted and sick. I curl up on the cold floor of my cell, and for a moment, right before I close my eyes, I can almost believe I am in the grand room they have been conjuring for me with their glamours. Tonight, the stone feels like a feather bed. Chapter 24. The next day, my head pounds as I am once again dressed, and my hair is braided. Merfolk put me in my own clothes, the silver dress I wore to Tarin's wedding, now faded from exposure to salt and frayed from being picked at by undersea creatures. They even strapped knife fell onto me, although the scabbard is rusted, and the leather looks as though something has been feasting on it. Then I am taken to Balekin, dressed in the colors and wearing the sigil of the undersea. He looks me over and hangs new pearls in my ears. Queen Orlaf has assembled a huge procession of sea folk. Merfolk, riders on enormous turtles and sharks, the selkies in their seal form, all cutting through the water. The folk on the turtles carry long red banners that fan behind them. I am seated on a turtle beside a mermaid with two bandoliers of knives. She grips me firmly, and I do not struggle, though it is hard to keep still. Fear is terrible, but the combination of hope and fear is worse. I careen between the two, my heart beating so fast and my breaths coming so quickly that my insides feel bruised. When we begin to rise, up and up and up, a sense of unreality grips me. We cross the surface in the narrow stretch between Innswil and Innsmouth. On the shore of the island, Cardan sits in a fur-lined cloak, regal on a dappled grey steed. He is surrounded by knights in armour of gold and green. To one side of him is Madoc, on a sturdy roan. To the other is Nihwar. The trees are full of archers. The hammered gold of the oak leaves on Cardan's crown seems to glow in the dimming light of sunset. I am shaking. I feel I may shake apart. Orlaf speaks from her place at the center of our procession. King of Elfham, as we agreed, now that you have paid my price, I have secured the safe return of your seneschal, and I bring her to you escorted by the new ambassador of the undersea, Balekin of the Greenbrier line, son of Eldred, your brother. We hope this choice will please you, since he knows so many customs of the land. Cardan's face is impossible to read. He doesn't look at his brother. Instead, his gaze goes to me. Everything in his demeanor is icy. I am small, diminished, powerless. I look down, because if I don't, I am going to behave stupidly. You have paid my price, Orlaf said to him. What might he have done for my return? I try to recall my commands, to recall whether I forced his hand. You promised her wall and hail, says Cardan. And you can see she is so, Orlaf says. My daughter Nicasia, princess of the undersea, will help her to the land with her own royal hands. Help her, says Cardan. She ought to need no help. You have kept her in the damp and the cold for too long. Perhaps you no longer want her, Orlaf says. Perhaps you would bargain for something else in her place, King of Elfham. I will have her, he says, sounding both possessive and contemptuous at once. And my brother will be your ambassador. It shall all be as we agreed. He nods toward two knights, who wade out to where I am sitting and help me down, help me to walk. I am ashamed of my unsteady legs, of my weakness, of the ridiculousness of still being dressed in Oriana's utterly unsuitable dress for a party long over. We are not yet at war, says Orlaf, nor are we yet at peace. Consider well your next move, king of the land, now that you know the cost of the fiance. The knights guide me onto the land and past the other folk. Neither Cardan nor Madoc turn as I pass them. A carriage is waiting a little ways into the trees, and I am loaded inside. One knight removes her helm. I have seen her before, but I do not know her. The general has instructed me to take you to his home, she says. No, I say, I have to go to the palace. She does not contradict me, nor does she relent. I must do as she says. And although I know I ought to fight, that once upon a time I would have, I don't. I let her shut the door of the carriage. I lean back against the seats and close my eyes. When I wake, the horses are kicking up dust in front of Madoc's stronghold. The knight opens the door, and Narbonne lifts me bodily from the carriage as easily as I might have lifted oak, as though I am made of twigs and leaves instead of earthly flesh. He carries me to my old bedroom. Tatterfell is waiting for us. She takes down my hair and strips off my dress, carrying away Nightfell and putting me into a shift. Another servant sets down a tray, holding a pot of hot tea and a plate of venison bleeding on the toast. I sit on the rack and eat it, using the buttered bread to sop up the meat juices. I fall asleep there, too. When I wake, Tarin is shaking me. I blink hastily and stumble to my feet. I'm up, I say. How long was I lying there? She shakes her head. Tatterfell says that you've been out for the whole day and night. She worried that you had a human illness. That's why she sent for me. Come on, at least get in bed. You're married now, I say, recalling it suddenly. With that comes the memory of Locke and the riders, the earrings I was supposed to give her. It all feels so far away, so distant. She nods, putting her wrist to my forehead. And you look like a wraith, but I don't think you have a fever. I'm fine, I say, the lie coming automatically to my lips. I have to get to Cardan and warn him about the ghost. I have to see the Court of Shadows. Don't act so proud, she says, and there are tears in her eyes. You disappeared on my wedding night, and I didn't even know you were gone until morning. I've been so frightened. When the undersea sent word it had you, well, the hiking and Maddox blamed each other. I wasn't sure what was going to happen. Every morning I went to the edge of the water and looked down, hoping I could see you. I asked all the mermaids if they could tell me if you were okay, but no one would. I try to imagine the panic she must have felt, but I can't. They seem to have worked through their differences, I say, thinking of them together at the beach. Something like it, she makes a face, and I try to smile. Tarin helps me into my bed, arranging the cushions behind me. I feel bruised all over, sore and ancient, and more molten than ever before. Vivian Oak? I ask. Are they okay? Fine, she says. Back home with Heather, who seems to have gotten through her visit to Fairyland without much drama. She was glamoured, I say. For a moment, I see anger cross her face, raw and rare. Bibi shouldn't do that, Tarin says. I am relieved not to be the only one to feel that way. How long have I been gone? A little over a month, she says, which seems impossibly brief. I feel as though I have aged 100 years beneath the sea. Not only that, but now I am more than halfway through the year and a day Cardan promised. I sink back on the cushions and close my eyes. Help me get up, I say. She shakes her head. Let the kitchen send up more soup. It isn't difficult to persuade me. As a concession, Tarin helps me dress in clothes that were once too tight and now hang on me. She stays to feed me spoonfuls of broth. When she's ready to go, she pulls up her skirts and takes a long hunting knife out of a sheath attached to a garter. In that moment, it's clear we grew up in the same house. She puts the knife onto the coverlets beside a charm she takes from her pocket. Here, she says. Take them. I know they'll make you feel safer, but you must rest. Tell me you won't do anything rash. I can barely stand on my own. She gives me a stern look. Nothing rash, I promise her. She embraces me before she goes, and I hang a little too long on her shoulders, drinking in the human smell of sweat and skin. No ocean, no pine needles or blood or night-blooming flowers. I doze off with my hand on her knife. I am not sure when I wake, but it's to the sound of arguing. What's over the Grand General's orders? I am here to see the High King Seneschal, and I won't be put off with any more excuses. It's a woman voice, one I half recognize. I roll off the bed, heading dizzily out into the hall, where I can look down from the balcony. I spot Dulcamara from the cart of termites. She looks up at me. There is a fresh cut on her face. Your pardon, she calls in a way that makes it clear she means nothing of the sort. But I must have an audience. In fact, I am here to remind you of your obligations, including that one. I recall Lord Royven with his salt white hair and the promise I made him for supporting Cardan half a year ago. He pledged it to the crown and the new High King, but on a specific condition. Someday I will ask your king for a favor, he said. What did I say in return? I tried to bargain. Something of equal value and within our power. I guess he sent Dulcamara to call in that favor. Though I do not know what use I am to be when I am like this. Is Oriana in her parlor? If not, show Dulcamara to it, and I will speak with her there, I say, gripping the railing so that I don't fall. Maddox's guards look unhappy, but they don't contradict me. This way, says one of the servants, and with a last hostile look at me, Dulcamara follows. This leaves me time to make my unsteady way down the stairs. Your father's orders were that you could not go out, one of the guards say, used to my being a child to be minded and not the High King Seneschal with whom one might behave with more formality. He wanted you to rest. By which you mean he didn't order me not to have audience here, but only because he didn't think of it. The guard doesn't contradict me, only frowns. His concerns and yours are noted. I managed to make it to Oriana's parlor without falling over, And if I hold slightly too long to the wooden trim around windows or to the edges of tables, that's not so awful. Bring us some tea, please, as hot as you can make it, I say to a servant who watches me a little too closely. Stealing myself, I let go of the wall and walk into the parlor, give Dulcamara a nod, and sink into a chair, although she has remained standing, hands clasped behind her back. Now we see what your High King's loyalty looks like, she says, taking a step toward me, her face hostile enough that I wonder if her purpose is more than speaking. Instinct wants to push me to my feet. What happened? At that, she laughs. You know very well. Your king gave the undersea permission to attack us. It came 2 nights ago, out of nowhere. Many of our people were slain before we understood what was happening, and now we are being forbidden from retaliating. Forbidden from retaliating? I think of what Orlaf said about not being at war, but how can the land not be at war if the sea has already attacked? As the High King, Cardan owes his subjects the might of his military, of Madoc's army, when they are under threat, but to deny permission of striking back was unheard of. She bares her teeth. Lord Reuben's consort was hurt, she says. Badly. The green-skinned, black-eyed pixie, who spoke as though she were mortal, the one whom the terrifying leader of the guard of termites deferred to, laughed with. Is he going to live? I ask, my voice gone soft. You best hope so, mortal, Dulcamara says, or Lord Reuben will bend his will to the destruction of your boy king, despite the vows he made. We'll send you knights, I say. Let Elfham rectify our mistake. She spits on the floor. You don't understand. Your High King did this for you. Those were the terms under which Queen Orlaf would return you. Balekin chose the guard of termites as the target. The undersea attacked us, and your Cardan let her. There was no mistake. I close my eyes and pinch the bridge of my nose. No, I say, that's not possible. Balekin has long had a grudge against us, daughter of dirt. I flinch at the insult, but I do not correct her. She may rail at me all she likes. The High Court has failed the Court of Termites because of me. We should never have joined the Harcourt. We should never have pledged to you your fool of a king. I have come to deliver that message, and one message more. You owe Lord Reuben a favor, and it best be granted. I worry over what he might ask me for. An unnamed favor is a dangerous thing to give, even for a mortal who cannot be forced to honor it. We have our own spies, Senescal. They tell us you're a good little murderer. Here is what we want. Kill Prince Balekin. I can do that, I say, too astonished to wake my words. I am not insulted by her praise of my skill at killing, but setting me an impossible task is hardly flattery either. He's the ambassador of the undersea. If I killed him, we'd be at war. Then go to war. With that, she sweeps from the room, leaving me sitting in Oriana's parlor when the steaming tray of tea comes in. Once she is gone and the tea is cold, I climb the steps to my room. There, I take up Tarin's knife and the other one hidden under my bed. I take the edge of one to the pocket of my dress, slicing through it so I can strap the knife to my thigh and draw it swiftly. There are plenty of weapons in Madoc's house, including my own nightfall, but if I start looking for them and belting them on properly, the guards are sure to notice. I need them to believe I have gone docilely back to bed. Padding to the mirror, I look to see if the knife is concealed beneath my dress. For a moment, I don't know the person looking back at me. I am horrified at what I see. My skin has a sickly pallor, and my weight has dropped enough to make my limbs look frail and stick-like, my face gaunt. I turn away, not wanting to look anymore. Then I go out onto the balcony. Normally, it would be no small thing to climb over the railing and scale the wall down to the lawn, but as I put one leg over, I realize how rubbery my legs and arms have become. I don't think I can manage the climb, so I do the next best thing. I jump.